There's now a way to contact the Wolf Connection podcast. Send us an email to podcast@wolfconnection.org with your comments, questions, and guest ideas for Stephen and myself. You may hear your question answered on an upcoming podcast. Thank you for your support, and howls to you all. Welcome to the Wolf Connection podcast. I'm your host, John Kalfa. Let's talk about some wolves. I'm running solo for this edition of the podcast, but I have a fellow New Yorker who we were just speaking beforehand. We found out he's from originally from Binghamton, New York, but he's in Colorado Springs, Colorado. He's an artist and a sculptor, and we will show you when we post the podcast the sculpture that this individual made, and the proceeds were then donated to Wolf Connection, and we thank him greatly for that. This is Ted Heistman. Ted, it's wonderful to meet you, and again, thank you for the work that you're doing. Your clay sculptures are amazing, and obviously the donation to Wolf Connection. How are you today?
Thanks. Yeah, I'm great. It's really great to meet you. I'm really happy about the Wolf Connection. I work at a warehouse, and so I listen to it like almost half the day. I've been going back. I'm going backwards because I just learned about it recently, and I'm going farther and farther back in time. I think it's like almost like Christmas time, like a last year now is where I'm at. So, so it's kind of funny. Yep.
Wow.
But I felt like you guys,
that's
you guys
amazing.
Exposed me to so many cool people and organizations, like the Wood River Project and like range riders and like all these people that are helping like wolf conservation in different ways. And I felt like you guys are giving this issue like so much exposure from so many different angles that I felt like it would do the best just to donate to you guys, so that's kind of why I decided to do that.
No, we appreciate that. And I got the email forwarded to me from Ree, who's our marketing. She's a director of development, and she does a lot of great work and a lot of great reach out. And it was just a great, like I said, an awesome gesture by you. Tell me, because we were discussing just before we started, what was you had told me you were looking at some of the wolves that were in some of our videos, I guess on the website, but you said there was one in particular that sort of struck you that you used as your template, I guess, for your sculpture.
Yeah. I guess her name is Alma. Is that correct? Alma? Ozma. Yeah. The female wolf. Yeah. I kind of liked her build. Like the first wolf I did, and then the guy that I did that wolf for, he commissioned me to do a second wolf. But the first wolf, I wanted to do like a female wolf. And my girlfriend and I, we both liked that. We both grew up watching that movie, Never Cry Wolf. And they had this female Angeline. And I kind of had that idea in my head, but I was looking online for references, and I kind of just liked, she had kind of a real wild, like wolf look, but kind of a more feminine kind of a look, like with her bone structure, like more delicate, and I just thought she was like an amazing animal to use like for a reference. I used other references too for like different angles and different parts of the anatomy, but I just kind of felt like that kind of brought everything together in the kind of look I was going for.
That's fantastic. Do you do that with all of your other, when you sculpt any sort of, it seems you do a lot of animals. Is that your goal? You look for different angles of different animals in the wild, and you use that as you go through the process? What is your artistic vision? How do you start even with just it's clay, and then you create this beautiful end project?
Oh, thanks. Well, I think it's really been like since COVID, I really got back into sculpture, because I initially got laid off from my job. And, I had some time in my hands. And so I started sculpting again. And I guess what I usually do is I have an idea in my head, and then I sculpt something like fairly quickly. Like I make an armature, and like the armature will be like wire, like this kind of very bendy wire you can use. And then I put tinfoil over it, and then I put the clay over that. And it's still kind of flexible at that stage. And I get the kind of gesture and the kind of the feel I'm going for. But then when I get down to like the finer details, I go to like references and from pictures I find online, just like image searches. And I try to I try to get an idea in my head of what I want the animal to look like. And this idea in my head, I kind of try to think of the proportion, and then I use like the photographic references to just kind of like fine tune the details. So that's pretty much what I do.
Yeah, it seems a really in-depth process because you're starting from scratch every single time. I saw a couple of the woolly mammoths that you did on your social media, and to me, it's weird. I don't use my creative side of my brain. I guess I think it's the left side. I can't
yeah, maybe the right side.
Since I was in school. Sides. But yeah, I did the right side. It's either the right or left. It's one of those two. But just to be able to imagine, as you said, the position you want the animal to be in, what kind of action, the reaction, the facial structure, and then to be able to really sculpt. What I found fascinating looking at it was just the way you're able to make the different layers of fur and to have those different layers with whatever the tool that you're using to make that detail really show up. Because that when you come and you look at wolves in the wild, if you see pictures and things of that sort, their coats are really incredible. And there's so much depth and layering to it. So I found that interesting how you were able to do that. What's sort of the tool that you use, and how are you able to get that depth out of that part of the animal?
Well, I'm glad you said that, because it really is interesting with the wolf's coat, like how many different sort of sections there are, because they have like a kind of a rough around their cheeks, and then along their neck, they have kind of an interesting pattern, and then their shoulders, there's different areas where the fur is a lot thicker, like with real long guard hairs. And it's funny because the tool that I have all these tools that I bought for sculpting clay, but I just use like this ice pick for like the fine details. I could try to grab it real quick.
Okay.
This wooden thing where it's like a point on one end, and then it's more flat on the other end. And then I use this ice pick for the fine details. And I've talked to some other sculptors that I've met about like the fur textures, like some people I talked to online. And also I have kind of like a mentor. There's like a fine art sculptor that lives here in Colorado Springs. And my girlfriend's parents had like mutual friends with him, and they met him at actually a memorial service for another friend that had passed away that was an artist. And they referred him to me, and he always had wanted to like talk to like a newer sculptor and like share some advice, because an old guy had like mentored him and given him a lot of advice. He wanted to pay it forward. And he kind of worked with me in how you use different details of the sculpture to direct your eye to certain places. Like you don't want the viewer's eye to like go away from the sculpture. You kind of want to kind of hold your interest, So I've kind of been trying to do that with like the fur patterns. And it's really kind of neat when you sculpt an animal, because you learn so much about them. You get such like an intimate view of like all the tiny details in their life. And I like to learn about their natural history too, to get more of a picture of what I'm doing. But it's amazing like how much you just learn. Like, just even if I was just going to sculpt just for myself, it's just like a fun experience to like learn so much about different animals by sculpting them.
You really seem to get immersed in that, and it seems it only helps in your creative vision. When did you start working with clay, and what's some of the best advice that you've gotten through your artistic process? Because you just said you have a mentor that you're talking with, and I'm sure there's a bunch of people who sculpt as well. So what are the trade secrets that you guys go back and forth about? And yeah, when was that first initial thought for you, or that passion that you say, I'm going to work with clay and I want to sculpt?
Well, when I was a kid, I did do a lot of art. And I guess as I got older, I just kind of got caught up in working like different jobs and doing different things. And I didn't really make a lot of art for a while. I got back into painting as an adult, and I never really got back into sculpture until recently with COVID. I don't know exactly what gave the idea, but I just like with my job, I was doing customer service at a call center, and then they closed the call center and we're working from home for a while. And then most of us got laid off. And this was like early in COVID, and we're all kind of sort of quarantined. We're not really sure what to do. A lot of things were closed. And I guess I just kind of got an idea that I'd like to start getting back into sculpture again, just for kind of like a hobby to do while I'm kind of shut in like this, And I just I kind of got it into the idea of doing like sort of realistic wildlife sculpture. I just kind of hit on that because I feel like even though it's not my career, I'm kind of like a naturalist kind of by avocation. I'm just very interested in the natural world. And so I just felt like it'd be a fun way to kind of pass the time, maybe learn some more about animals, and then maybe I could make some stuff that's good enough that other people would want. It's just been kind of an evolution. But it's only been about like a year and a half that I've been really serious about it.
Isn't it amazing though how that I love that you use it's an evolution, because who knows if this would have happened. And I'm not saying I want you to that, and I feel for you with COVID happening and the layoffs and you not having the job that you had before, but now it seems to have opened a different part of you and a different section that, who knows, maybe you had this intuition beforehand and now it's really come to the forefront. And we'll make sure you guys follow Ted on his Instagram so you guys can check out his pictures and things of that sort. But it really just seems, do you feel like you found a different passion? Do you feel like this was something maybe it was down deep inside, you didn't realize it until you started, wiring up and doing all the sculpting?
Yeah, I felt like it was something. Well, actually, when I was before this happened, I was more into politics, and then I got a little burnout on it because I felt like there was only so much I could do as one person, and I felt kind of frustrated. I was excited about Bernie Sanders when he was running for president, and my girlfriend and I were both kind of excited. And I did a little bit of canvassing for him, and then we voted in the primaries, didn't make it, and then it was just kind of a big disappointment that he didn't really he didn't end up being the Democratic candidate. And so after that, I felt kind of burnt out, and I was following politics for a while and just kind of feeling powerless. And I just said, well, I want to just do something that I can control myself. And that's another reason why I decided to kind of get into artwork. So it's like something tangible that's like under my control. And then I felt like maybe there is a way, because one of the issues I'm very concerned about is conservation. And I felt maybe there is a way to combine my artwork and my passion for conservation. And I was thinking, well, if I sell this wolf sculpture, I'm going to donate it to wolf conservation. And I started posting that on my Facebook. And I wasn't aware of it, but just by mentioning that I'm going to sell this sculpture and donate to charity, like Facebook asks you, like, what charity do you want to donate it to? Like, do you want to make a button? And initially I had this other charity that I was going to donate to. And when I would post pictures of the wolf on social media, I would post that button, and then people would donate, and they ended up donating about, like, my friends and family donated about like $250 just on Facebook to defenders of wildlife. So I thought that was kind of cool. So I said, maybe I'll just, from now on, like I said, I was going to donate all the money from this one wolf to charity, but maybe like from now on, when I make wildlife sculpture, I'll always have like a percentage, maybe like 10% go to charity. So then I felt like that's something I could like do myself. I don't feel powerless. It's maybe like a small gesture, but it's at least something I could physically do and to contribute to wolf conservation. So I kind of felt like that would be a good way to put it together.
It really seems that it's amazing how we find ourselves in different situations, right, Ted? Because we find passions in one way, and then the door opens to another thing. And I find that really, really amazing about what you're talking about is that sometimes we get burnt out over certain things, and then it leads us maybe to a better avenue of where we can use our talents. Because
Right.
I really do believe this is a talent. I mean, if you threw me a mold of clay, I don't know if I could come up with the same the same things that you come up with. And for you to do that in an advocacy sort of way is, again, it always helps that even if it's a little piece, it always helps whichever the organization is. And it doesn't even have to be us, but the fact that you have that already set in your mindset is fantastic. What was the thing that drew you to us? Because I know, and just for reference, because we were, again, as we were talking before we got on here, Ted is working his way backwards through the podcast. So he's counting down from, I think,
right.
episode 57 to, wherever we are. So,
right.
But that's great. And I find that it's incredible. Again, thank you for the support as always. But what was the draw to us and what we do, and that you initially said, that you said ultimately this is where I'm going to send my donation?
Well, the draw was your concept. Actually, I've gotten back far enough where I think I know where this concept came from, but the concept you talk about, a lot of the radical middle, I really like that because I kind of feel like, no matter what people's personal opinion is, there's all these other people in the United States that have a say too. And so if we want to have the best outcome in terms of conservation and recovery for wolves, we're going to have to join forces, and see things from other perspectives and people from other walks of life to just kind of come together and, put some better policies in place. So I really appreciated that because I don't necessarily come at the wolf situation from the same way as an animal rights activist that might be totally anti-hunting, anti-eating meat. I mean, that's fine if that's their perspective and that's their opinion, but I don't necessarily have a completely anti-hunting view. I just like the idea of having a complete ecosystem, a healthy ecosystem, a healthy population of wolves. And so I really appreciated in your podcast how you'll interview an ethical hunter, 1 week, and then you'll interview a range rider that works with ranchers, and you interviewed I think a woman that was in a landowner association that helps large landowners that own wild land do conservation, and then next week you'll interview a lawyer, so I just felt like that's the best way to do this type of conservation is to show a lot of different perspectives and show how people can work together to have a positive result. So I felt like that was the least divisive way to maybe make progress, by highlighting people that use other tools besides lethal control. I learned all these terms like flaidry, and I learned about all these, different devices they use that trick wolves into thinking there's human presence. And, people work with other people work with guard dogs and things like that. So I felt like this organization was had the most comprehensive view, I think, of wolf conservation. So that's what drew me to it.
We appreciate that. And Stephen and I have set out from the beginning to really make sure that we are fair and balanced. And we do our best to really give everyone, or as many people with as many voices, into the conversation, because as you said, and as we've said on this podcast multiple times, we have to come together in order to get this specific issue, which can be so divisive. We need as many people as possible. We need as many people who are willing to come to that radical middle and understand everybody's perspective and understand that we can do better for the wolves and that species, and we can do better for ourselves. And I really hope that it continues to go down this pathway. It seems to be doing that. I'm glad it brought you to us and it called to you that you were making these sculptures, and it was something that really spoke to you. So, as I say to a lot of people, if we reach one person, that's one more person than we reached the day before.
Yeah.
And so that's always the goal. And I know you're in Colorado now. And again, we touched on this right before we started. From your perspective, how are things feeling in Colorado? I know you're in Colorado Springs, which is a little bit more of a populated part of the state.
Yeah.
What's the general vibe or the general feeling right now as the wolf reintroduction in Colorado is heading towards 2023 and getting a plan together? Do you have a feel or a sense in your community or people that you talk to about how they're feeling?
I don't really have that much of a feel for how people think. I mean, I know there is a wolf center here that's similar to the one you have, and I haven't been to it yet. My girlfriend and I want to go, but I have a coworker that's involved in it because I work at a warehouse, and she works there, and she was telling me about the other wolf center in Colorado. So I think a lot of people that are I guess on the more progressive side are pretty positive about wolves, but so my girlfriend's family is from Gunnison, Colorado, and that's the western slope, and that's sort of where the wolves are going to be reintroduced from what I've gathered. And she grew up there, and she knew a lot of ranchers. I'm sure they might have a little bit different perspective. As I visit that area more, I'm interested in talking to people and getting their take. But one experience I had where I sort of got a glimpse of how divisive this issue is when I hiked the Pacific Northwest Trail. And this was a few years ago. This was 2017. But this trail starts in Glacier National Park, and it goes all the way to the Pacific Ocean in Washington. And when I did this trail, I hiked the eastern half of the trail, and then when I connected on to the Pacific Crest Trail, and I hiked all the way through the state of Washington and most of Oregon, and they had all the forest fires. So I got kind of stopped that year. But when I was hiking through Montana and Idaho and Washington, I would meet locals and I would ask them, and we would strike up conversations, and we're in like a wild area. So we'd start talking about wildlife. And a lot of times when you hike these trails, when you get to when the trail crosses the road, you hitchhike into town to get supplies, then you hitchhike back. So I meet a lot of local people that way. And it was interesting that people's opinions, like the hikers have a more of a progressive view of wildlife like wolves, but the local people, they just tend to have this idea that wolves are dangerous. That, well, I can't believe you're not hiking with a gun. There's wolves and grizzly bears out there. Of course, I did have bear spray. But from my perspective, I never really had a mindset that wolves were something to worry about. I was just like hoping to see a wolf or hear wolves howling. I did see some tracks, and I was like super excited to see wolf tracks. And I actually saw bears, like black bears and grizzly bears. But I was like hoping to see wolves. And the locals that are in western Montana and Idaho and eastern Washington, they have more of a mindset that it's something like dangerous. And like whenever I would meet a local, they would be like some type of a person working in the lumber industry or the ranching industry. And they were always like heavily armed. And they would make little comments like, yeah, there's like a lot of wolves around here. So that's why I carry like a sidearm. And I didn't really, when somebody's giving you a hitchhike ride to town and they just picked you up in the middle of the wilderness somewhere, like I didn't feel like it was appropriate time to get in a debate and like try to change their opinion. I was just kind of curious, what they had to say. But I just did notice there is like a dichotomy, like an urban and rural mindset about wolves. It's like it's very different.
Yeah. It's you have a good background, I think, in this because of what you were saying when you were doing things for Bernie Sanders, and it's good to have these conversations though, and I think it's good even as you said, you were hiking, and so you're getting a ride from some of these individuals, and it's good though for their voices to be heard and to get an entire encapsulation as to why the feelings are there and to understand where these feelings are coming from, why this is here. Is there a way that we can work together, maybe change a mind or two here and there? It really depends. But I think it's good on you, I think, to be, we don't listen enough. And I think it's good that people, I think just from hearing that little story, to understand that we need to listen a little more. And we need to let people explain themselves and let people have their say and not really talk at people unless, really not at any point in time, but I think really just to be able to hear each other and make sure that those conversations are as grounded and as neutral as possible to really get to the crux of what the issue is. So I want to ask you too, I got a couple more things before I let you go. What's the next project that you're working on? Are you working on another wolf? Are you working on what's in the pipeline for Ted Heistman right now in terms of sculpture and things of that sort?
I'm trying to get a website together. I haven't really got that together. But the next thing I'd like to do is a wild horse. And it's also the wild horse issue is something similar. There's a lot of activists that are concerned about wild horses, and they think that they are being, managed a little too harshly, like a little too heavy-handedly, And so I'm wanting to do a wild horse next, and I've been kind of researching, wild horses like Mustangs and like their genetics and their history, and where they come from, where they live, like their kind of their behavior. And they're not really like a native animal, but they're sort of in some ways become a native animal, because they've had a presence, for about 500 years, like since the Spanish explorers, released, their horses into the wild, like in the almost like the 1500s, I want to say. And so that's a really interesting thing. And there's like a parallel I've been studying with like the public grazing issue. I think I kind of went down a rabbit hole, like with studying like public grazing. And I'm kind of torn about it, because I feel like from other things I've read, when people have a value that they have on the land, it helps preserve it, like in terms of conservation. But there also is an issue with, public grazing, and then people thinking that wildlife competes, with their livestock, and that it should be sort of supported in such a way that it'll enable people to graze livestock, cattle and sheep on public land. But so without getting too much into the politics of that, I've just been kind of looking at it from that perspective. Like in my perfect world, I would like to see like more like bison and elk and wolves and even like wild horses, but just things on public land. Like if like wildlife should have the priority, I feel like it's probably good to have public grazing, for ranchers and for people to not have a push. I'm almost afraid if there was no public grazing, there'd be more of a push to sell off public land, because it is kind of there's people that want to do that too, so I'm just kind of trying to stay open-minded about that. But I've just become kind of interested in wild horses too, because it kind of covers some of the same issues. But I'll probably just do some commissions of people that want a sculpture of their favorite animal. I'll probably go in that direction.
That's great. I mean, tell everybody where. I two more things. So I want to promote. So tell me tell everybody who's listening where they can view some of your work, where they can they message you? Where's a place where they can, as you said, if you want to get a commit, if people want a sculpture of their favorite animal, whether it's a rhino, a wolf, a lion, whatever it is, how do they contact you and where can they see your work?
Yeah, probably the best place now is Instagram. is to follow me on Instagram. It's Utah Soup, which is kind of a funny name because that was my trail name when I hiked the Appalachian Trail. I had like this caveman name, Utah, and I would make this soup. I would make this soup every day. Usually it would be like rice noodles or mashed potatoes and like some pepperoni sticks. But then sometimes I'd get some like rock tripe or some other kind of edible plant that I found on the trail, and I'd mix it up there, and it became like an Utah soup. So I started my Instagram to show pictures of my hikes, and then it's kind of evolved into more like artwork. So if you can follow me on Utah Soup at Instagram, and I think also if you search for my name, Ted Heistman, on Instagram, it would take you there. But if you follow me on Instagram, you can see some of my artwork, and if you message me, I could do a commission for people that want to have a sculpture of their favorite animal.
Absolutely. We're going to have that in our description so you guys can take a look at it. And when we post the podcast episode, we're going to release the sculpture that Ted made that he was able to donate the proceeds to for Wolf Connection. So you guys can see that and get an idea of the talent this man has and what he's doing. My final question for you, Ted, is when you hear the word wolf, what is the thing that comes to your mind?
Yeah, I was hoping you'd ask me that because you ask everybody that, and it's really interesting. I always love hearing people's answers, But I have to say, when I think of the word wolf, I literally think of the call of the wild, like going back to the Jack London book, but also the sense that growing up as a kid and reading about wolves, it sort of made me sort of feel like a call of the wild. It made me really want to go to Alaska and places like Montana, northern Minnesota, like places where they had wolves. And so when I hear the word wolf, it just sort of makes me remember that call I felt of just wanting to be out in the wilderness where wolves live. And I just feel like if there's a wilderness that has wolves, I just feel like it's just that much more wild. It's just like when I've been lucky enough to like see wolves, I've only seen like 2 wolves in the wild. And, but it's just, and just hearing them howl or just seeing some type of sign, it just, to me, it's like an amazing experience that I'm like sharing this wilderness with these like amazing animals. So that's what I would say. It makes me think of the call of the wild.
I love that. It's a great description. It's a great sentiment. Again, thank you again, Ted, for, the conversation. Awesome to meet you and continue with that sculpting. It's beautiful work. It's great. And like I said to everybody who's listening, we will have Ted's Instagram so you guys can contact him, look at all his work. And once you get that website up and running, just give me a heads up and we'll promote that as well, Ted. So again, appreciate you. Thank you for the donation and look forward to more of your work.
Yeah, thank you, John. And thank you for doing your great work. And I'm going to be staying tuned. I'm going to I'll probably get to the end and then I've heard all of them. So I'll just be waiting for that next one to come out. So
nice. I love it. I love when people go down the rabbit hole. So this is great. Oh man, got another one from New York. So another one of my New York brethren. So Ted Heistman, thank you so much. Appreciate everything. And we'll stay in touch. Thanks everyone for listening. Howls to you all. And we will see you next time. Bye everybody. Looking to support Wolf Connection or sponsor one of the wolves in our pack? Just go to wolfconnection.org, click on the donate tab, and find out more information.